Great. Welcome everyone to the June 2024 Dependency-Track community meeting. Thank you for showing up. Just some logistics. This meeting's being recorded and will be posted on YouTube in about a day. And it'll be posted on the Slack channel when it's available. The slides will be available as well. We'll be posting a link to the chat in some time. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. If there's enough time, we can answer a couple questions at the end of each section, but we will also be having a general Q&A section at the very end for any questions around dependency track that you may have. Next slide. So quick overview on the agenda. The first section will be project updates, including the future of dependency track. That'll be by Nicholas and Vinod. And then next we'll be learning about how Backbase uses dependency track by Marlon and Federico. And then we'll be going into our Q&A. So I'll turn it over to Nicholas and let's get started.
Thanks so much, Caroline. I hope you can hear me. Yes. So for the project updates, we released version 4.11.1, 4.11.2, and 4.11.3 with like a quick timeline here. On May 7th, we released the 4.11.0 release, and then like in a very short succession, we released the bug fix versions. And they contained like various bug fixes reported back from the in-progress version 4.12.0. And it also included some translation improvements, which some people have, or two people, in fact, have generously submitted, namely for Japanese and French. And like, let me just take the opportunity to say, if you are a native speaker in one of these languages that we support or we do not yet support, please feel free or feel encouraged to submit fixes or even new languages entirely. You don't have to like fix the entire language file. If it's just one word at a time, that's totally fine. But if you see any issues, then please just raise the PR. We are more than happy for it. And then for 4.12, with regards to the last meeting where we like showed the rough roadmap for this release, not much has changed, but there are already a few important notes that you should already be aware of when you upgrade to 4.12. Namely that we raised the Java version or the baseline Java version that you need to run dependency track from version 17 to version 21. And this usually should not affect you if you run the official Docker images. But if for some reason you still run the executable war outside of Docker, or you build internal container files or container images in your organization, maybe your organization requires you to use certain base images, then this will be important to you because then you need obviously a base image that supports Java 21. We also resolved a long-standing enhancement for moving away from Swagger 2, which is already quite old for the REST API specification, to OpenAPI version 3. And despite the specification itself changing, the paths to reach it will also change. Previously, you had like /API/swagger.json. This will now be /API/OpenAPI.yaml and OpenAPI.json respectively. There was no way to support both Swagger 2 and OpenAPI version 3, just due to how the frameworks work. So sadly, this is kind of a breaking change, but yeah, I guess we all have to deal with it. Yeah. Then also we moved from Java EE to Jakarta EE 10. And this again will most likely not affect anyone, hopefully, unless you still deploy dependency track as a WAR file into an application server. I think technically you still can do it. For example, if you deploy it to a Tomcat. So if you do this, you need a new version of Tomcat or Undertow or whatever that supports Jakarta EE 10. Otherwise, this will not work anymore. Version 4.11 introduced a new way of processing uploaded bombs, and that one was optional. You have to explicitly enable it in the settings via experimental bomb processing v2. And this, like the original, the old bomb processing v1 has been removed in version 4.12, and v2 is now the default. So version 1 is removed. And as a quick reminder, as I just said, you can already enable version 2 in the experimental settings. Calling it experimental is probably doing a disservice to the current state of it, because we certainly think it's ready for production use. It's just to be safe, we called it experimental in 4.11. Yep. And 4.12 will also now support version imports of CycloneDX bombs in the version 1.6 specification. So if you have tooling that generates those bombs already, you will get good use out of Dependency-Track version 4.12. Some updates on Project Hades. Not much, to be honest, but we already have a Helm chart for Hades. It currently lives in the Hades repository, which makes it a bit fiddly to install it via Helm, because there's no official repository yet where you can just say Helm install this chart. So we are migrating the Helm chart to the official Helm chart repository in Dependency-Track. This is currently ongoing, and it should make installing Hades and kicking the tires a lot easier going forward. We are still porting changes from Dependency-Track version 4.x, namely 4.11 that I just talked about, back to Hades. And this is still ongoing, as I said, but huge thanks for Caroline, who's also on this call, for helping with porting this. It's a long list of changes we need to port, but I hope we get through it eventually. And yeah, then the last thing, yesterday, in fact, we received a generous contribution from someone who added an adopters.md file to the repository of Dependency-Track, where if you are using DT at your company or your organization, you can voluntarily add your name or the name of your company in this file. And if you do that, it would help us get more exposure, because many people are looking for, hey, who's actually using this project, right? So if you are allowed to do it, and if you want to do it, if you want to expose yourself in this way, please consider adding your name to this list. There's also an issue form that you can use. You don't have to raise a PR, but you can do that also as well. Yep, and then I'm handing over to Vinod.
Thanks, Nicholas. Can you all hear me? Yep. So future of dependency track, right? So it's just a proposal. It's an attempt, or an initial proposal attempt. So just made last night after midnight. So please excuse any data issues or dates or anything. So what it is there, I'm not sure if you all can see your screen. I just took a previous version information, the dependency track release cycle for version 3, version 4. Version 4 is the current version, what we all are using, and the future version, version 5, which is Hades, codenamed as Hades, right? So I mapped some of the dates from version 3 when we started. I think that version 3 was started somewhere in 2018 and then finished around 2020. And then transition to version 4, and version 4 is one of the version which is there for a very long time as a GA or generally available. And we started working on version 5 in parallel, unlike the older version. So version 5, I think mid last year we started working on version 5. Even this named her beta. It's a production grade. One of the large bank is running it in production, but we don't want to call it GA yet, because there are certain things that we would like to have before making it as a GA, right? So that work is still going on parallel, and whenever we have new release of version 4, we need to backport those changes to the version 5 as well. So that cycle or loop is going on, and we would like to figure it out how we can move from version 4 to version 5. So what we decide, or at least made a decision, we need to have an end of life, then end of support at some point. We haven't finalized the dates. What is that GA going to be stopped, or then we will transition to end of life or end of support. But in a high level, you can see at some point in future, we will have an end of life for version 4. What we meant by it when we say end of life, we will still accept community bug fixes or security patches during the end of life phase, right? And critical bug fix, especially priority one, and vulnerabilities with the impact, demonstrable impact, may be addressed by the DT team as well. So it's not completely end of life. It's still there is a level of support for the community, because we want to make sure that the DT version 4 users still can use it for a while before they can switch over to version 5. And version 5, there are some architectural changes, so some users may need some more time than others, depends upon their situation. But at the same time, we want to transition or make version 5 GA, right? So that means version 5 will be the major version. All the major features, things will go only on version 5. So yeah, that's a bit high level. If you have an immediate question, you can ask now, but we can, of course, we can discuss much more details later when we have, more questions. Yeah, so besides, I think Marlon got a question. Besides DB changes, do you see any other blocker for moving to Hades? Nicholas, you would like to take that question?
I would blockers possibly not. I would describe the most outstanding issues as like quality of life things. So although you can move to Hades right now, if you don't have immediate support from the team, it may be a bit bumpy. So we really want this to be smooth. You should be able to just upgrade from version 4 to version 5, including like database migrations. So this should all be a smooth experience. If you try it now, you possibly can do it, but it will not be pretty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the same time, if you are new to the community, you just want to kickstart with the DT, maybe you should also give a try to version 5 and see how the version 5 is working, right? So this may help you to move out from the burden of migration, right? There will be a migration irrespective of it's now or later. It's a different technology. At least even if you are using Postgres database, you may still need a Kafka or Kafka compatible, streaming or something. So this kind of technology need to be there, and you still need some level of migration. Even though we say it's seamless or smooth, there can be. I think there will be a downtime, Nicholas, please. Karan, we are not going to look for a rolling update or rolling upgrade, right? That's almost impossible with the significant architecture changes. So you may need a downtime. So you may have to prepare for that. So that's why, if you are new to the community, you would like to try, maybe try with the version 5 and give us feedback, and we can help to navigate you through that version 5 as well. Yeah. Yeah, I think Adam shared in the message. Yes. Yeah, I think we can discuss that details later, more details about, the Kafka and all those topic. But I think we need, um, some kind of solution to scale for enterprise. I think enterprise use case is one of the main reason we created Hades or version 5, right? It's not like, sorry. It's not like the version 3 or version 4. Yeah, the SBOM is now a thing. Like everybody generate a lot of SBOMs, and SBOM is used in so many places. So I think to handle that level of scale and load, Dependency-Track need to, should be able to handle that level of load. So that's the reason. But we can definitely discuss more details and solutions, or some ideas how that can be achieved. I don't know if Nicholas or someone else got anything to add there.
I think maybe it would be a good idea to have like dedicated community meetings for like what Hades is, why we did it, and why we made certain decisions. And if people have questions or concerns, maybe just to give this open forum to people to ask questions, I think that might be beneficial. Yeah, some demos, obviously, yeah. There's loads of great stuff already in Hades that we just need to show off, I guess, or need to do a better job of showing off. Yeah, and in general, like when we say we want to make Hades GA, what will be part of the GA will be a smooth migration story and good documentation as to like what you need to prepare for a production deployment, how it is going to happen, etc., etc. At the moment, we realize it's quite sparse, especially on the documentation side, but that's being worked on. Yeah. So maybe if there's interest in this community session just regarding Hades, then please let us know. More than happy to do it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think we can have ad hoc sessions and yeah, we can discuss more there. So yeah, I think there is no other immediate question. Maybe we can, the demo session Nicholas already answered. So maybe we can move to Backbase presentation then we can come back on the Q&A and even discuss it further, yeah. So to you, Marlon, yeah.
Yep. Hi guys, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Federico, together here with Marlon. We'll talk a bit about the company we work for, which is Backbase, and our experience with Dependency-Track and how it helps us securing our product. So yeah, first few introductions. Marlon, you want to say hi?
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Marlon. I started as a developer in 2006, and in 2019 I switched to AppSec.
Yeah, similar story for me. I started as a developer back in 2002, more or less, switched to AppSec later, 2018, more or less. We both worked for an internal core security team at Backbase, and we are mainly responsible for processes and tools related to security SDLC. So yeah, that's us. Just a little bit about Backbase, the company we work for. So yeah, for over 20 years, we've been providing solutions for financial institutions, banks, credit unions, and our engagement banking platform, the product name in essence, can be used out of the box for our customers to provide great experience for their users or extended and customized. You can definitely read more about Backbase products at our public website, which is listed here. So yeah, so security at Backbase, we strive to address security in all aspects of our SDLC, from education to implementation in many phases. And after that, of course, monitoring and keeping track of what we have supported in production. So out of the scopes here that we listed, for example, two critical parts here are SCA, software composition analysis, and container scanning. And for these scopes, we use Dependency-Track to help us achieve better security state. So we will dive a little bit more on how we use Dependency-Track and how it helps us in these activities in this presentation. So yeah, a little bit about just before that, why we chose Dependency-Track, right? So last year we started a journey, maybe even a bit before that, to choose a replacement for our previous commercial tool. And we evaluated multiple solutions and ended up deciding on Dependency-Track. Why Dependency-Track then? Yeah, besides covering and offering the core features that we would look for in an SE solution or sort of a Dependency-Track solution, we can integrate it well with our tools, with the products that it offers. And also this like 4 important points here. So first of all, with open source, we have the ability to resolve issues independently and in a faster pace than, for example, sometimes commercial solutions can, and contribute back to the community as well. So yeah, we have vibrant community which is ready to assist, and it's really great. So vision, adoption of open standards, for example, like SBOM, and yeah, it's sharing this common goal of reducing vulnerabilities, so it's compatible. And cost is a factor as well. So yeah, it's always a plus to spend less there. So I pass it on to you, Marlon, to talk a bit about more details.
Yeah, thank you. So let me describe a little bit how we use Dependency-Track. So at Backbase, it's really important for us to understand the status of our current developments. But since we provide and support multiple versions of our applications, we start our journey with Dependency-Track on every release. So for each release of our product, we generate a SBOM, which is actually a merge SBOM with all the subcomponents of our product. And we also attempt to enrich it. So we try to, sometimes when we generate the SBOMs with the tools that we have, sometimes some of the licenses are not fetched or the information is not correct. So we have an additional tool that tries to enrich this information. So after the generation, we send the data to Dependency-Track, and for each vulnerability or policy violation that Dependency-Track finds, our internal tool is triggered to perform actions against the data provided by the trigger. Our internal tool performs a few validations and business logic, like validating which subproject was the origin of the vulnerability, or if the issue is already being addressed. If needed, these will create tickets or Slack notifications to the teams responsible for that part of the code. So we basically right now use Dependency-Track for 3 things. So each Dependency-Track project is actually a product bundle. So like I mentioned, if we have 100 microservices, they will all be bundled in the same project. And a Docker container, so everything is bundled in the same product bundle. Right now we use Dependency-Track for tracking third-party vulnerabilities and control licenses. And we also use Dependency-Track to control our supported version. So Dependency-Track is actually the place that we defined everything that is supported is whatever is active on Dependency-Track. So this means that we keep an history of all the versions that we have, but only the ones that are currently active are the ones that are supported. For instance, if we have a customer that comes to us, oh, we have this version, and I know that it's out of support, but can you help us address some vulnerabilities? We can always go to the Dependency-Track, re-enable that version, and get the latest status of that version. So a few numbers. So we have around 1,500 projects. And again, these are big projects, not every single microservice. So if we split this, it will be way more. And from those, we have around 150 active projects with more than 166,000 components. And these are all numbers coming from Dependency-Track. So for the future, we see that there are a lot of things that we can improve in our own processes and the things that we can adapt with Dependency-Track. So for managing vulnerabilities, we currently vulnerabilities are simply reported by Dependency-Track, and we don't manage them in the UI. We would like to start managing them and suppressing them in the Dependency-Track. That's one of the things that we would like to know. So for managing advisories associated with the previous topic, we provide advices to our customers based on the analysis of those vulnerabilities. So we get the description from the CVEs or from the GitHub security advisories, but we actually do some advisories on top of that. So we match it with the product and we try to see if we are vulnerable or not. But currently this process is detached from the Dependency-Track, and we would like to use Dependency-Track to compose and manage security advisories. Another thing is VEX and VDR. So we really think that those standards are useful. And right now, we only have our advisories on an internal page that could be accessed by our customers, but we would like to provide them the option to extract a VEX or a VDR so they can import those reports into their own tools. And sub-projects, like I mentioned before, right now we are merging everything into a big SBOM. We want to get rid of this because there are a few issues that we detected with this approach. So we want to split it, and we want to have projects with sub-projects where we can have smaller SBOMs that are more accurate and that we can actually get better dependency graphs and better information. And that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thanks, Marlon and Federico. I'm not sure if we have any question for them before going to other question. So anybody? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So when you talk about VEX and VDR, right, do you actually share your SBOMs with your customers, or are you just interested in like sharing, hey, this product is not vulnerable to something, but not on the component level? How would you envision this working in your use case?
Since we work with banks and financial institutions in the US, we are actually we need to actually share the SBOMs with them. So we generate everything and we share the SBOMs with them. But we also see that sometimes just having a page where they see the vulnerabilities and the advisories, it's not good enough. So we want to be able to provide them in a better format, a standard format, so they can just reuse it on their own tools.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thank you.
And yeah, I have follow-up question. So when you plan to share the VEX and VDR, are you planning to share along it with your software or SBOM bundle, or how you're planning to share it? Is it going to be embedded, detached, where the location? Any thoughts?
So we still don't have the discussions on that. We still need to have discussions on that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the first thing that will probably happen is that we will have a link on these advisories page where customers are already used to go, so they can extract this file and use this file. But it depends on how the product is actually being used, because we have customers that access directly the Docker images, and then it will be difficult for them to have these files, and especially because these files are dynamic. When a VEX or a VDR that you generate now might be different from the one that you generate tomorrow. So right now we don't have a clear plan for that, or I could say that probably it will be at least at first stage on that page, but we will need to check what are the better options for us in the future.
And just another follow-up, like, do you currently manually triage those vulnerability findings and update regular basis? How do you handle it? Yeah.
Yeah, so we have an internal process that we used way before Dependency-Track, where we analyze every single vulnerability and try to check against the code. And that's why Federico have been finding a couple of vulnerabilities that are not well described, or they are missing information. And unfortunately, developers are not open to update the CVEs. But yeah, so we do it against all the vulnerabilities that we detect, and we try to, as much as possible, try to see if we are vulnerable or not. Of course, we know that the best solution is always try to move forward and patch to get rid of the vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like there's some
Actually,
questions in the chat.
yeah.
The first one from Val is, would it be possible to access these SBOMs as a non-customer?
No.
Not
So
really, no.
the SBOM contains not just third-party information, but also first-party information, and we don't want to disclosure those the software that we actually have.
Yeah. And then the next question from Val is, how do you prioritize the vulnerabilities Do you have any code reachability automation in place?
Do you want to answer that one, Fred?
Yeah, good points. No, not like a objective tooling, but we do our research as well on top of public CV information and attempt to figure out the best we can how that happens. So, but again, it's kind of an art in itself. And like Marlon said, the best move is always to accommodate and upgrade whenever you can.
Another question just came in. How many potential vulnerabilities are we talking about roughly? And how long does it take for you to qualify them?
Yeah, it depends from vulnerability to vulnerability. So we have, and from week to week, we have weeks that we have like 10, 20 vulnerabilities to review. And depending on the amount of work, we might prioritize them more or less. What we try to do is, whenever it's possible, we ask teams to address them, to patch them, to issue patches. So we dedicate less time on them. And whenever we see that this is not possible, either because we don't have time or because there's no patch, then we dedicate more time on that. And it could be like vulnerability could take like 1 hour, or it could take 1 day, 2 days to validate. It depends on the vulnerability. It depends on the project or the projects affected. It can be really, really different depending on the vulnerability.
Oh, there's a new one. Do you also check the vulnerabilities in the Docker images shipped as part of the product?
Yes. Yes, we do. It's slightly more difficult to validate them, since it's like if we have a vulnerability on libc, how do we know that from a Java application we are not affected? So it's quite difficult. Yeah.
Looks like Steve is raising his hand.
Yeah, I do. I wanted to prioritize the questions in the chat. I actually have two questions for you. First question is, you mentioned VDRs, for example. Do you use Dependency-Track to also track your first-party vulnerabilities and provide that in the VDR, not just the third-party vulnerabilities? The second question I have is really about the release management process. Do you see any possibilities for DT to kind of play a bigger role in release management?
So for the first question, no, we don't do it for first-party vulnerabilities. Maybe one thing that we would like to explore is to link projects inside Dependency-Track, because we might have a subcomponent that it's used across multiple projects, and that linking part is something that it's really, really important for us. And right now, yes, the release for us, at least for the security team, we consider that everything that it's on a dependency track as far as release is the source of truth.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anyone else got any other question? I mean, first for Backbase team, if you would like to come on mute and ask directly or send a message.
Feel free to let us know if you want to get off mute. We'll have to
Yeah.
select that.
Maybe while others are going to ask, I have more questions. So do you guys use Dependency-Track for any gating purpose internally?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. You don't. Yeah. So you don't need to go to the technical details of the answer, right? Like I'm just asking, do you use a Dependency-Track for like a release gating, like soft gating or hard gating or anything like that at this point?
I can say not yet, but we have plans to also have dependency track as a quality control check.
Oh, there is a question from Aravind. What tool do you use for generating SPOM and pushing it to DT?
So we use all the tools that are tied to the package managers. So we have the Maven plugin, we have the CocoaPods plugin, well, it depends on all the technologies that we have. There's only one exception. We use CDXGen for Android because the tool that was supposed to tie to Gradle doesn't support multiple modules. And that was a issue that we didn't have time to look into, because whenever we find issues, we try to contribute back. So we did a couple of contributions to the Cyclone DX CocoaPods, to even CocoaPod. We found an issue on CocoaPods as well, and we had to fix it. So whenever we find an issue, again, this is an open source project. We try to also contribute back to the community.
Love it. Thanks for that. Like, so, yeah. Just a follow-up question on Aaron's question. Every time there's a piggyback. So do you consider Cyclone DX Maven plugin is most consumed in your company, or which plugin would you rate, like in terms of usage, right? Like across the projects?
I'm not sure. Well, we have a bunch of projects that use the Maven plugin, but we also have for web, we have a bunch of them. So I don't know the percentages. I would say that Maven is actually actively used, but we also have web, we also have mobile. So I don't know the percentages.
And how do you combine them from, I mean, do you, I believe you have front end, the microservice and all these things, right? Do you combine them at some point, or what kind of tool you are using to, merge them and things like that? What kind of merging you're following?
Yeah, so I've been addressing this on the Slack channel a couple of times. There's multiple ways to merge SBOM, but there's no good way to do it. So right now we are trying to keep as much information as possible without having a really, really huge SBOM. And the issue with this is that you lose some information on the dependency graph. So what we would like to do, like we described, is we want to move to sub-projects and also contribute back to dependency track to have the BOM links to be able to navigate between projects.
So I think there is a controversial question there. If you don't want, you don't have to answer it, but yeah, I mean, we don't want to necessarily select winners here, and I have to also help out reaching all other plugins. So yeah, I need to be very cautious. So do you think the CDX Gen could replace all those tools in the future for your use case? Your use case. What is the tool you use to analyze the Docker images?
Okay, so when we did our research, one thing that we noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, CDX Gen also depends on those tools. So if you want to do a Maven scan, if you want to do a SBOM for Maven, CDX will actually call this plugin. So we decided to go directly to the source to find issues on the source in order to avoid any other issues that could come with the CDX Gen. We don't know if in the future we will move to CDX Gen, maybe something that we can discuss internally. Regarding Docker images, I think someone probably already asked me this on the Slack channel. We use Trivy because Trivy, whenever they generate the SBOMs, they have additional properties, which, because we are using Trivy as a scanner as well in dependency track, they are useful to get better results.
Awesome. I do have another follow-up question piggybacking on that. So yeah, firstly, thank you for your contribution to DT on Triv integration. I think it's awesome. Do you guys actively started using that in your company? How what are the challenges or not challenges, maybe improvements or something that make your life easier because of that integration, right? Yeah, if you can add that.
I don't know if you want to say something, Fred, but let me just say, so one of the things that when we did the POC, at some point we were discussing if we should have dependency track or just Trivy. One of the reasons why dependency track won was the fact that it has a UI, and for people that are not developers or don't like to look into the console, it will be better to have. So having Trivy on dependency track for us is the best of both worlds. So we can just continue relying on Trivy scans, add an additional scan, like we are also using the internal scan. And in the future, if we want to adopt more, we can also contribute with more scanners to dependency track.
Awesome.
A popular marketing strategy to just provide the scanner, but not the UI for it, right? Not the aggregator for it. Yeah.
I think there is a comment from Steve. I don't know, Steve, you want to read it out? Maybe.
Yeah, sure. Just FYI, so when we define the scope of ECMA TC54, so for those that do not know, TC54 is where the standards geeks hang out. This is where all the formalities of Cyclone DX kind of take place. One of the things that is in scope for TC54 is in fact defining various merging algorithms, right? There's different ways that you can do this, and there are trade-offs depending on which approach you take. And we're going to be defining some various merging algorithms and actually standardizing them. That way there's clear and transparent use of like what are the names of the different algorithms and what are the requirements of what do they do. So that way it'll at least give end users, hey, if I'm going to merge and I want to use this approach, I know that it's going to have these potential downsides of doing that or this potential upside, right? So all that information we're going to be working on, that's part of the scope of that TC. So just FYI for everyone. Thanks, Vinod, for posting the link.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, any other question for Backbase team or us, like especially the future of dependency track? Any question on the plans or any suggestion, comments? If you don't have a question, I have so many questions for Backbase team, so I don't want to hijack the entire session, but I would really appreciate.
Well,
to
I have one
see.
question for dependency track. Did you ever consider moving out of Java?
Go ahead, Nicholas.
Yes, considered yes. The problem is that like the original dependency track is written in Java. So when you move to another technology, you have to rewrite all this stuff, and all of a sudden you lose track of what previously worked and what should not work. So this is kind of a big problem when you move to a different technology. Then we have considered, like we broke up the monolithic API server into multiple services, right? And we have considered writing those services in a language like Go, Python, whatever, because that should be possible now. The downside with this is the team we have currently is mostly schooled in Java. Plus, you lose the ability to share code. So now you have to maintain, for example, persistence models in Go, in Java, and Python. And this is all maintenance effort that keeps on piling up, right? But that being said, we have nothing like against introducing Go. I would love to introduce Go. Please let us do it. But we should really justify doing it, and it should not cause any additional maintenance overhead, I think.
Maybe I will add a few more lines as well. So yeah, so Hades or version 5 at least enabled that, right? Like previously it's a giant monolithic and you don't have any option. Like we can't have much language diversity, but even though there are challenges with the language diversity, now there is a possibility to do that. And I believe, Nicholas, you did an early attempt of writing one of the service in Go in Hades. There was a branch, but I couldn't find it. I think you deleted the branch.
No, I think
But
the branch is still alive, but it's still like it's very old.
yeah.
It was for the component that fetches information from repositories, for example, made in Central. It's quite of an easy to externalize task, and it felt like something that was viable to do in Go. I don't quite remember why we abandoned it. Probably because we already had a replacement in Java. I don't quite know.
Yeah, but it's enabled. There is a possibility. So right, like even, yeah, there can be so many other simple or stupid stuff. You don't need a shared library or things like that. So maybe you can do it in Go, right? Like, but I think one of the things we were waiting at that time, the Kafka ecosystem wasn't that much supported or well integrated with the Go ecosystem. I may be wrong. That may be out of date information now, but that's one of the reason I remember that we didn't spend too much time, but things are moving and changing. It's a technology, right? Like it's changing every day. So yeah, but you can still go and do experiment as well, Marlon. Like so, I don't know, Nicholas, if you can share that branch link, maybe that might help inspire Marlon and come back with rewriting everything. I don't know. Yeah,
Yep,
awesome.
sure. Also, just want to add there's something coming up that would be even more decoupled from dependency-track that would be a good candidate for Go. So we will probably publish an RFC for this or some kind of request for comment thingy, some kind of document. But ideally, we want to have a pre-compiled vulnerability database instead of just mirroring the NVD, mirroring GitHub advisories, etc. In like every dependency-track instance, right? It would be much better to have some centralized way in GitHub where we pre-compile the database, and this could be done in Go, and then just share that with all of the dependency-track instances. It would make many things a lot easier for us, and would also like enable the community to provide like fixes for incorrect data, etc., or enrichments. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When Dependency-Track was originally created 11 years ago, the NVD was basically it. And when version 3 came out of Dependency-Track, first of all, version 2 was an experiment and a complete failure. So that's why we don't have a released version of version 2. But version 3, we introduced OSS Index, and really it was OSS Index and the NVD. That was really it. And over the last, decade or so, decentralized vulnerability intelligence has become a thing, right? There's all kinds of sources of vulnerability information that are public now. So yeah, I think it would be great to have a centralized vulnerability feed, essentially, that the Dependency-Track team can pre-process. And we would love community support to kind of help us make that happen.
I just want to add, Nicholas is also a maintainer or lead for CycloneDX Go and CycloneDX Go mode project. So yeah, he loves both Go and Java. So just want to put it out there.
Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, man, nist with the per should make one of yeah, bit better. So I had a question related to the sources to you, Marlon and Federico. What kind of sources you are currently using in DT, right? I mean, if you don't want to disclose, absolutely fine if you have limitation, but it's a developed here.
Do you want to answer, Fred? Yeah, I think right now we are using NIST and OSV.
Okay, good to know. So that integration, OSV integration is worth, like we started that with the Hades, but yeah, it's good that we backported into version 4. So it's useful for others.
Yeah, the only thing that I think is missing from OSV is also integrating the scanner into Dependency-Track.
You mean OSV scanner or?
Yes.
Okay.
But that should that should yield similar results to dependency track, right? Because it's also based on Perl. I may be wrong.
From the test that I made, I found a couple of differences.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're willing to share, we can look into it. Maybe there's a defect in dependency track that could definitely be.
Yeah, OSP, even though OSP support Perl, Nicholas, I think Perl is not the primary citizen identifier. I think OSP still use their component. The other identifier, right? Perl is optional, and some of their Perls are not still great, but yeah, there are issues with that. Yeah. I think there was a comment from Wal. I think if you work with us, yeah. Work with US and NVIDIA mandatory. Okay, did the recent hiccups affecting the NVIDIA impact your business perspective? Yeah, so you want to take that, Marlon?
Yeah, so if we see, this is happening since February. You don't have accurate information on NVD since February. There's even reports of people saying, oh, NVD is going to disappear. No one will look into it anymore. To be honest, I prefer the GitHub security advisories. I think having a community contributing to the final version of the advisories is a big step to make things better. So basically, we look into NVD, but we also look into GitHub security advisors. Combine both information to try not to miss things.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we have 6 more minutes. If anyone got any other question for a Backbase or us, like again, future of dependency track. Like if you have any question, concerns, suggestions.
I think there were some questions from earlier on from the update section. I think this one was from Marlon about hiates. If you're using Postgres, are there any issues with possible migration?
I think we did answer that, right? Like, yeah, we did answer that, Caroline.
Oh, okay. And then the published metrics and benchmarks on which DT doesn't scale further, DT4?
Oh, do you publish metrics benchmark and Nicholas, you want to take sorry.
Yeah, sure. Definitely a fair question. I have to admit we don't have published metrics on this one. Mainly also because it's kind of difficult to measure, as stupid as it sounds, because the content of the bombs you ingest into dependency track differs, right? You can have a very minimal SBOM, and then you may be able to scale to much larger portfolio sizes. But when you start ingesting things that contain a lot more information, that number looks very different. And the main concern that we had with, maybe I can give a little bit of an outlook here. The main thing we had with the move from dependency track to hiates, the main limiting factor was the event processing, because that hits the database like crazy, and there's no throttling available in dependency track version 4. Basically, as soon as an event comes in, it starts doing its thing, it starts being processed, and there's no way to, how do I explain it best? There's no way to prevent the system from getting flooded with expensive events, if you will. You can upload hundreds of bombs, and those hundreds of bomb upload requests will block everything else from happening. And they will also hit the database quite hard. And this is pretty much the same issue for all of the events that dependency track is processing, including vulnerability processing, repository meta-analysis, policy evaluation. All of these things are going on asynchronously as events. And yeah, is there a follow-up question? So I guess, let me just quickly wrap this up. So there are no metrics, no published metrics. We are hoping to publish something like a comparison when hiates gets closer to GA, because obviously you should know why you should upgrade, right? We want to make this juicy for you, so you want to upgrade. But yeah, no current benchmarks.
Also, just want to add to Nicholas mentioned, like even we if there is any community interested to comparison and benchmark, like that would be great as well. So we did a load test in early days at City, even though that's not, I wouldn't say a great load test, but it's a significant number in terms of how many projects had come in. But again, like Nicholas mentioned, it won't be same for others, right? Like the BOM size and components, all these are, depending factors. So, but if you would like to run your own test, that's also great. But we know that the version 4 is going to struggle at some certain number or some certain load. After that, version 4 won't be able to seamlessly handle your requests, right? Like so that's one of the main reason we had to do it in a new architecture in City, because City's requirement were like we should be able to scan, I don't know, 200,000 projects or this many components and things like that. So that wasn't possible with the version 4. So we had to make a scalable version 5. And I think there is another question on multi-tenancy. I think we discussed this multiple times. Nicholas can add better, but I think we need to define what exactly multi-tenancy for each person. Maybe we can have an issue in the GitHub about multi-tenancy. It may be a combination of access controls, or it may be some other things, right? Like, but yeah, I think we may need a better clarity of what you meant by multi-tenancy. Maybe Nicholas, you want to add further there?
I think we have an open issue in the Hades repository. It's called fine-grained access control, I think, and that's where the multi-tenancy discussion was started. We received a draft from IBM, but I'm not sure if we can share that. I will have to check with Melba. But essentially, there are multiple ways you can do or achieve multi-tenancy, right? And some multi-tenancy implementations would involve just the permissions, but some would also include the resources, so that one tenant cannot like use all of the system's resources for themselves, but also others are not impacted, right? So there's a bit of a, like, what do we actually want to achieve with this multi-tenancy feature, and what is kind of a non-issue for us? Yeah, thanks, Minot, for sharing.
Yeah, no worries.
Great. Looks like we're at time, so I want to wrap up. Thank you everyone for the great questions. Seems like there's a lot of great ideas to follow up on with the team, so feel free to start the conversation or continue them in the Slack channel or in the repository, GitHub repo. On your way out, make sure to fill out the survey. Thank you everyone for presenting, Backbase for presenting, and for a lively discussion with everyone. All right, thank you everyone.
Thanks so much.
All right, bye.